here. Just going to talk to you a little bit about refinishing hardwood floors. On my reno project, I got old hardwood floors, 1-inch oak, stained in this natural or honey look. I have the choice to tear out all this floor and start from scratch, which would have involved a big tear out, getting rid of that material, and a brand new installation. Instead, to save money, I've decided to refinish these floors with a much darker stain color. I'm going to take you through the process of stripping all this floor, applying the stain, and applying the finishing coats to protect the floor.
Here's a look at the two most used tools for this job: the orbital edge sander and large drum sander with dust bag. Starting with the 40 grit sandpaper, run drum sander parallel to the boards on the floor. You can see it really removes a lot of finish in one pass. See, that's a first pass, and I've already cleaned up all my paint overspray and taken the finish off the wood that's probably been there for 50 years. This floor is about 1,100 square feet. If I was to buy a new hardwood floor at $5 a square foot, I'd be looking at a $5,500 cost just for material to put down new stuff, not to mention the expense of hauling away the demolition and the time taken to pull it out. $10,000 for new, and in this DIY refinish hardwood floors, I spent about $1,000 on rental equipment and the materials used to stain and finish the floor. Don't work over the same spot too much. Keep an eye on stripping the wood and getting through that pass and moving over a couple of boards and going back and forth and back and forth. So you can see that I've probably made 10 passes and I'm about 5 feet away from the wall. That would mean I'm moving about 6 inches each pass. Water damage and little imperfections will clean up a lot when I wood fill the whole floor. These larger imperfections you see here, I filled in with wood oak plugs, and using a dark stain really helps hide all the blemishes. Once finished with the drum sander, it's time to use the orbital edger to go around the perimeter. Use 40 grit with this edger. Work sander back and forth along wall to blend in where the drum sander has stripped down to the original floor. Just gonna go nice and slow and work it so you only have to go through once on the 40. This equipment can be rented at most equipment rental companies. I found that they usually have all the sandpaper as well. Look for a Bona supplier for all the stain-in finishes. I really have had great success with their products and will always recommend them for all refinishing hardwood floor projects.
After a long day of sanding off the original finish of this floor with my large machine, I was using a 40 grit sandpaper to strip that all off. Once I got the heavy stuff off in the bigger areas, I used my orbital sander around all the edges, using a heavy grit sandpaper as well. Gave me a really nice stripped appearance to the oak. After that, I reduced my sandpaper to 80 just to soften it up a little bit, and went through and filled the whole floor with wood filler. You can see this light skim nearly matching the same color as the unfinished oak has been applied through the whole floor, squishing down into the joints. Now when I go over it with my machine again, all the fill's going to remain in the small cracks, so that when I refinish the surface, I have a brand new flat surface again with no cracks or voids. So it's been a long night. I'm going to let this all set up for the evening. I return tomorrow. I'm going to start sanding it all off and get ready to start doing the stain. I have made a color chart over there with some different stains, mixing certain amounts with other certain amounts to create a color palette. From there, I'm going to choose one and go through and stain this whole floor.
So with the mixing of the stains, it really depends on what supplier you're getting the product from. The supplier I work with allows me to get it close on site, and then I tell them my ratio and proportion, and they mix me a larger container. Now let's start getting that second sanding. I've moved to an 80 grit sandpaper. I'm going to use the large machine to sand off the patch, getting it back to that stripped look. Once I get all the patch off, with the drum sander, I'll go with the edger and start up doing all the edges and little junctions that the large machine couldn't get at.
We're ending day 2 of refinishing the hardwood floors. Just to highlight what we've done so far, I'm going to go through the process once again. We started by using a 40 grit sandpaper in our large sander and our perimeter orbital sander to take off the finish and bring it down to the raw wood. After that was done, I then skimmed the whole hardwood floor area with the wood filler to match this type of wood, which is oak. I let that dry overnight. This morning when I got here, I switched my sandpaper on my large machine and my orbital machine to an 80 grit sandpaper. Then I went through this whole place again, resanded off all the filler, and got it down to an 80. Tomorrow, I'm going to come in and sand it even further with the 120 grit, which is the final sanding, work all my junction points where the large machine meets the orbital sander, make sure that everything's all good, and by the end of day tomorrow, should be ready to stain on day 4. Pick a color for my samples that are here, just getting that mixed up at the supplier right now.
I'm not going to show much about applying stain. There are many ways, and most important is testing on a similar surface to find a look you want, and then do that look on the whole floor. I like to use a clean rag to apply my stain.
Pour it onto the floor, skim it out, go back, wipe it off, and carry on. Now this stain is a little bit more technically advanced than other stains, and what I mean by that is when you would stain and a little bit too much stain would go over another spot, and then or say you stained over a spot 2 times, you could really see it in the floor.
Work all of your edges first with the edge applicator and have your large foam applicator nearby. Pour the finish to the floor and use large foam squeegee to spread out the finished material. While using large applicator, keep pooling the finish in front of it, leaving a nice thick coating behind. Follow manufacturer's coverage guide to make sure you're using the exact amount that they recommend. Working my way outside. Then we've got to shut the job down for that day so there's no dust and particles kicking up, getting into the finish. I've got to be honest about the floor. When I came to look at it that next day, it looked really good. Like, I was happy with it how it was. The guy that was helping me with the project said that there is little bits of airborne material in the top coat and even some bubbles that have formed from the top coat. You have to go one more time with a buffer to lightly sand on top of this finish. Now that your finish is dry, I've taped on some sandpaper to my orbital polishing machine, and I'm just going to take the surface layer off of the finish so that I can bond the next layer on. And also the process is taking care of the little tiny imperfections that are in the first coat of sealer. If you don't have this large floor sander, I'm sure that an orbital sander would do just the same job. It just would take a little longer. Before I can apply the second coat, I have to go through and vacuum up all that fine white particle that came from the sanding. So you can see how clean the floor looks here. After that sanding, I'm putting on the second coat, and basically the same process as the first time. Use your edger, work around, pour some finish onto the floor, and note the technique of pulling it in towards you so you have always a pool of it in front of the squeegee. Now I'm out of here for a week or so. When I get back, I would expect all this tile to be done. Then I can go through and put the final coat. So you can see I'm doing the exact same as before. There's my edger. You can't really have other things going on the project at the same time because it will interfere by adding dust everywhere.
It is looking absolutely beautiful in here. Got these color match grills. They're all finished off. I'm gonna set them in today.